Okay, so let's start. Welcome everybody to this DayOne Labtalk of today about the future of aging. This is part of our Aging Well Catalyst project from the DayOne initiative at Basel Area Suisse. Today will be, of course, about Zayna and her book about the future of aging. One of the best books I've read in the course of last year, and I think a book that every innovator should read. I think it's a very important book that really will help us accelerate innovation in this very important field. We'll hear from Zayna in about 5 minutes for I think a 45-minute presentation, followed by a short Q&A if possible. We are here at Basel Area Business and Innovation. We are the innovation promotion and economic development arm of the region, with this mission to position ourselves as the Swiss business and innovation hub of the future. We do that in many different ways. We support entrepreneurs, but also we focus on activating innovation across different ecosystems. Life science, where we run one of the largest accelerator of molecules, Base Launch, one of the biggest accelerator in Europe, with a second initiative around production technologies called Industrial Transformation, where we do events, where we do acceleration programs and others, and with DayOne, which is our initiative about healthcare, which is really about shaping the future of health for the region, for the country, but also we hope globally. How do we do this? We are not specialists. We are the ones that bring people together. We know healthcare is siloed. We want to bring people together to solve problems that are very important for healthcare and for the patients, of course. How do we do that? We have different aspects here, starting with building communities, bringing the people together, inviting them to events. So we bring about 1,000 people together per year physically, and now much more with the new webinars and online events. And then for the very difficult topics, we create catalyst projects. And the topic of aging well and of the innovation about the future of aging is one of these important catalyst projects that I'll describe in a minute. We run an acceleration program that is right now focused on value-based healthcare. We are going to start that in a couple of weeks. And then we support the relocation of companies locally and run 4 innovation or collaborative workspaces in the region. And I have to show the news of today. So tomorrow we are officially have one of our innovation spaces within the Novartis campus as they are opening the campus. That's great news to us to help them open this campus of 12,000 people to us. Why aging? Why aging well? That's an obsession of me and I think of many others that I had since many years. I mean, it's very frustrating that very little is happening in the field of innovation for the aging adult. On the one side, there is a huge need. On the other side, there is an incredible economic opportunity. We have many more people getting in the advanced age with very good disposable income, and very little is happening in the field of innovation, or not enough is happening in the field of innovation. And that is what we want to address through this initiative, with for the first year really helping us understand what are the needs of the aging population, co-create innovative solutions with the public, create networking opportunities to bring these things forward, motivate you and others to be part of the initiative, and then share learnings and findings. But importantly is in the middle, we want over the years to create an innovation initiative around aging well with a think tank, but also an acceleration program, or as Zayna was telling me before, a scalation program where we can scale technologies at the interface between the innovation world and the aging adults, and creating this ecosystem here in the region. This is the program for the year. We stayed on track despite of the pandemic. We had a 50-person on-site workshop around mobility needs for the aging adults in February. We shared the learnings out of this on our website. Today we have real thought leadership. We're going to talk about the future of aging with Zayna, and in the fall we'll have an initiative together with the University Hospital of Basel about care transition. We want less hospital and more home, of course, for the aging adult, and then 2 more initiatives about nutrition and probably wellness management. So we have a team running this. that is driven by 4 persons who are supporting the initiative, which is Mika de Scott, Cécile Tardy, Safia Agheni, and Valentine Splet. That's the topic of today, The Future of Aging, one of the best books I've read. I know Zayna since some years. She was with us as we first shaped the DayOne initiative, I think 4 or 5 years ago, was with us on stage many times. And when she told me she's going to join SE Health to really create real impact on human lives, I had tons of respect. So extremely happy to have Zayna with us here today. So Zayna, welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Frank? Just yes, no?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry about that. And you can see my a picture of some beautiful women? Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
I can.
There we go. Thank you for the intro. I love what you're doing with Basel area Swiss with DayOne, and the focus, the clarity, the topics you're working on are exactly the right topics. So, let me share a bit of what we found in this and explored in this book. And hopefully for those of you participating, this might validate the path that you're on. It might open new ideas or opportunities, or might challenge maybe some of your thinking, and maybe you'll even challenge us. So what I'll do is explain a bit of why we wrote the book, who we are and my organization, and then we have 5 chapters. I'm going to try to go through each, and let's see where we end up so we can leave some time for a discussion. I am a big fan of more social learning and not didactic learning. So I'm kind of going to put a bunch of ideas out that are going to hurt your brain. Use the chat to just talk and chat and share and build and challenge and fight and argue. So please, I think it's more you're going to learn from each other, and I'm just providing a bit of a facilitation. And of course, let's share with the world. So a bunch of Twitter handles are at the bottom, and they're on the bottom of most slides. Okay, so, we all know aging is, kind of what defines us as humans. And I think linked to why I think Basel area Swiss is working on this and us is how we age actually transforms how we relate to many things, people, products, services, policies, everything around us. So there's this dynamicism to it. And, part of the why this book and why now is it's a pretty pivotal time in the history of our species. More people are alive in the world today who are over the age of 65 than have ever been alive past 65 in the entire history of humanity. This is just unheard of for our species and even our own biology to be alive this long. And we know that the rate at which, different parts of the world have extended life. So, the x-axis is kind of countries ranked from, lowest life expectancy to highest, and then how that's changed. And, you see in a very, very short order, life expectancy, for more the developed world has tripled and, quadrupled. And more importantly, the underdeveloped world, so the countries on the left, have had massive leaps in the last half century. And again, for most of the time society was on this earth, that wasn't the case. The average life expectancy for about 99.9% of humanity's existence was about, 18 to 25 years old. And we've just been on this massive exponential curve of life extension on the left. And then that correlates, in addition to other things like sanitation and healthcare and a little bit less war, to, our global population on an exponential curve. So, not only are we staying alive really on an exponential rate longer, there's also a lot more of us staying alive for a lot longer. So it's kind of like this collision of these, and then you add that during, the post-World War II population boom, at least in the West, one person was born every 10 seconds. That means today, every 10 seconds, a boomer is, becoming over 65 or 70. So we've just got a massive spike of this, more than it's happened historically. And that's kind of what came together to write the book. So now, did you ever think you were going to get calculus in a talk about aging? But, I'm reflecting on some of Elon Musk and others launching these rockets, and a big factor is escape velocity, right? So I don't know if anyone wants to put on the chat. Does anyone know what escape velocity is to get beyond the pull of gravity on the Earth? Let's see how smart you guys all. But your escape velocity for each planet is at what point does gravity no longer be able to pull an object moving away from the Earth, and then once it gets out of that zone, it just keeps going without all the input of energy. I don't see anything on the chat. So it's like 11.2 kilometers per second is escape velocity for Earth. And so imagine if, the metaphor of gravity was aging and frailty. Some futurists and longevity experts, think we are at or we're close to this concept of longevity escape velocity. And the basic concept would be for every year you're alive, all of the fruits of medicine and progress in society can keep you alive for 1 years, which means, we're at this kind of point of immortality. So I don't know if that's true or not. There's different predictions, but the point is life extension, will continue, maybe not at the same rate. And so we are a different society. And so, given all that though, because we were young and didn't make it past, 40 in the 1950s, nothing about society was designed for this kind of a population. None of its systems, its policies, its social constructs, its products and services, and you name it. And so that's kind of why we created this book, really just to put an anchor and say, where is this going? Using a pretty evidence-based, comprehensive approach. And that would allow, at a minimum, the first audience is my own organization, who I'll introduce you to be able to much more consciously design for the future. But more importantly, because we're a social enterprise, really create almost like a Bible for the world of, here are some roadmaps you might want to consider if you were trying to spread these concepts more globally. So I work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare. We are now kind of branded SE Health. And we are a social enterprise. We work on, we're obsessed with helping people live and age at the home of their choice. And our starting point has been healthcare as the lever to do that. And that's for about, over 100 years. We went from 4 midwives doing midwifery care in Toronto to now 9,000 leaders delivering care to people in their homes or on the phone. And that's about 21,000 exchanges a day. And about 85% of the people we support each day are the elderly population. We have a range of products or services we offer. The core is home health care, that's in the middle, but we also work in senior living facilities. We do a lot of work at keeping people out of hospital, hospital to home, all that stuff you're going to talk about at your next webinar. That's kind of my obsession. We have an education platform to train health workers in the home, and we have a private offering for family caregivers, which I'll talk about. So a collection, I'm not the only author of this book. This was a massive team effort of the brain trust of St. Elizabeth, leading with our CEO, who's, a rock star in her own right, and really the reason I'm at this company in the first place. And then, Mary Lou is a nurse and our VP of a lot of our new models of care that incorporate tech. And you're going to meet her again at the end of this talk. So remember Mary Lou. Our head of our research institute, Eric and Allison, are no longer with SE Health, but just brilliant thinkers. And then we partnered with a design firm called Idea Couture. They're global, but they're based in Toronto. Really to bring a bit of that design lens to the whole process. And they were just amazing partners. So the methodology was very scientific. I mean, we looked at over 450 signals we have been collecting from around the world of, what seems different about aging that doesn't match what it's been in the past. And then we clustered those into some themes. And, with a few rounds over about 6 months of research, we landed on these 5 themes. So it really was very bottom up, and we let the market tell us what it's seeing. And so that's kind of how we organize the book, where we explore each of these themes. So the first, chapter 1 is about community, so housing and living and built environment, and how communities and neighborhoods are designed. Chapter 2 is about healthcare. Chapter 3 is about all aspects of technology, which we call Geron technology. Chapter 4 is about the economics, so labor force participation, consumer purchasing, retirement, every aspect of kind of cash flow in and out in the lives of aging adults. And chapter 5 kind of pulls it all together with just what's the identity of aging. So there's a lot more in the book, and I'm not going to shamelessly plug it, but if you want to buy it, I know Frank did, and he wrote a review. It's on Amazon. So what I'll do is go through each chapter. I actually find it easier to start with chapter 5 because it sets the context. So I'm going to give a helicopter ride through the book. So, please just get the recording later, get the slides. I'm just going to give you a flavor for concepts because there's a big mix of people on this webinar today, and there's something for everybody. So I don't want to go too deep on anything. So each book kind of organizes the signals into some big shifts that are happening that really are, the shift to the right is where things are going based on signals. And so I'll just show you a few examples. So in the identity of aging, I think, we really reflect on a big shift of just the framing, a reframing of, is aging about reflecting on the past and waiting for some big crisis to change everything, to more of, really proactively reinventing and recreating. That's just part of the process. The old mantra, because you died, at 50 or 60, was spend your life accumulating knowledge and peak out, to this different context of becoming a wise leader, where you're actually creating more value for society in those last kind of 20 or 25 years. We explore sexuality and gender and identity, and how that's changing, and then, death and end of life. So it's funny. So in Toronto, I remember seeing when I was riding my bike, these ads on all the bus shelters about an aging cream. So a cream to help you be older. And I was going to share a video, but we won't be able to do that. And it turns out this was not an aging cream. This was a public service campaign that the city of Toronto and others created just to open people's brains to ageism, and how ageism in this case in the job place is happening and why, and how you don't realize it. And so it was called Image cream because we're bilingual in Canada. But if you play with the words, Image becomes ageism. That was the idea. So just an interesting thing that, our city would work with a pretty savvy advertising firm to start to change the conversation using a very different approach than what we normally do, which is have academics write a bunch of papers about the subject. And then, just starting to pick up that, the old mindset when you think of an old person is usually somebody bent over with a cane and very slow and very frail. And, that was inconsistent with the other images we were seeing of, people challenging a lot of assumptions about what this means. In the time I was in Netherlands, there's this pretty well-known character, and any Dutch people on the phone will know about him, who, started a petition to government to say he wanted to change his age because he physically was the age of a 40-year-old. He felt like a 40-year-old, but on Tinder, when he's trying to date, he couldn't get any dates. And so, he really said, look, I can change my sex and my gender. I can change my name. Why can't I change my age? And so I think it's just really challenging. Again, we created an entire set of public service products, like when you can drive, when you can drink, when you can, vote, based on age constructs that define society for a long time ago, but they don't necessarily make sense anymore. And then, other signals is just new words around aging, powerful aging, disrupt aging, age strong. There's a major kind of national senior living operator in Canada who literally their tagline is, "We're making aging sexy." And so, and then there's countries who actually have words in their language for this different type of aging individual. So Finland, and I'm going to hack the word, talks about the tervaskanto. And in Canada, we created although Zoomer's been co-opted, but, many years ago, there's an entire movement of the Zoomer movement in Canada, which is a boomer who has zip. The body of a 65-year-old, the mind of a 45-year-old, the libido or sex drive of a 25-year-old, and the heart of a teenager. And this movement in Canada has a whole, ecosystem around it that is not going to accept any of the old framing. I remember going through Boston Airport while we were writing this book, and they have a movement from the city to reframe aging, and theirs is age strong. And, these are the kind of messages they're, putting out there wherever mass markets are, so, this one woman on the left who's 70 is challenging the word frumpy, which we say in North America, that, I'm a lot of things, but frumpy isn't one of them. And then childish, I'm a lot of things, but childish isn't one of them. So something's going on with the identity of aging. And, it's been really fascinating to see media really kind of catch up with this movement, profiling the lives of these amazing, centenarians who are, living their best life well past the age that the data suggests they shouldn't be around anymore. You guys might remember the Washington Wizards. This was the last NBA team that Michael Jordan played for, the second time he came back from retirement from the Chicago Bulls. Well, they have a cheerleader team called the Wisdom. So Wizards Wisdom, that, you have to be over 40 to be on this team. Other kind of signals. So in Norway, there's a startup called Motiview that, developed a product that will go and do film of local neighborhoods that aging adults grew up in England or Norway or Sweden, or they're doing it in Canada. And they take it at a speed of going through the terrain, and then at home or at the nursing home, the elderly adult with any bike system and any computer just bikes, and amazing data, both clinical data and other data around activity, engagement, enjoyment, quality of life. And they kind of took it and created a world race where anyone in the world can participate in a road race that's bigger than the Tour de France, and has aspirations to be, the biggest sports event in the world. Other kind of, signals from Japan. There's a rugby league where the minimum age is 40, but they have people in this league who are over 90 years old, and they're breaking collarbones and they're tackling and they're competing, at the same level that, a 20-year-old would. And this is, pretty mainstream in a lot of sports, not just rugby. And then now, athletes who are elderly, are being called into photo shoots to really capture the essence of them and their sport and their body and their strength. I was going to show a video, but I won't work, of the grandma gamers. The one area where the elderly have really shown, they can kind of beat the pants off of anybody because they have a lifetime of gaming and working with their fingers and connecting their brain, is in gaming. And so this is a group out of Sweden called the Silver Snipers, and they compete hardcore. They have a coach who's a global champion in a range of the games that they play, and they're winning. And it's tough training. Other, different identities is around music and dancing. So, tea party raves in England at the nursing home. And then, this great story from Germany of these elder gentlemen who literally broke out of their nursing home to go to a metalhead mosh pit for the night, and nobody could find them. I'm on Instagram. You know, there's a whole growing movement of grandfluencers. So, you know, grandma influencers who are just, you know, through their platform, changing mindsets and profiling, you know, the art of possibility. Japan has a pop band where the minimum age is 100 years old. So they make music, they tour, and here they are. And then, you know, we do a lot in the book on sexuality, gender identity. I mean, you have to imagine some people who are 90 or 100 years old today, they've been through, you know, let's say they were LGBTQ, they've been through decades of policies that told them they shouldn't exist. They should be put in jail. They should be killed. Then it was like, oh, we'll moderately accept you. And then only recently, you know, in some countries was there, you know, it acknowledged to be married if you were homosexual, for example. And think of that trauma over all those decades. And, you know, now that's all kind of coming out. And it's just been fascinating to observe, and we explore in the book. And then just the last theme for this chapter is around death and end of life. And we really go deep on, you know, so many elements of death that we've just accepted as a society of how it's done. And they're all kind of up for grabs. I mean, if any of you want to get into a new business area, reinvent death and dying, reinvent the funeral industry. So home funerals, different ways to compost bodies and eco-type death, completely new business models around death and dying, obituaries, funerals, death doulas. This third area of new funeral business models that exploded with COVID, as you can imagine, because people couldn't go to funerals and a lot of people died. And then just completely new ways to live on and memorialize digitally. So there's examples of, you know, you could create a virtual reality avatar of your loved one that ages with you, even if they've passed on. And that matches, you know, their face and their language and their tone and their voice. I mean, it gets a little bit weird, but this is, it will be very different. So that's kind of chapter one. I want read the summary. You can get it here and get it from the book. Unless somebody stops me, I'm just going to keep going so we can get to some discussion. Okay, so that was the identity of aging. Now that set the stage. So let's talk about community, where people live, how they live, housing, etc. 4 big shifts. So the first, you know, which is a big one, and it's been very much exposed because the majority of people impacted by COVID are in nursing homes, is, you know, we've warehoused older adults into predefined models of living that make it much easier for the people who provide the living to organize themselves. And, you know, just that is not going to be accepted. Going forward, people will create their own version of living and their own version of housing and community. Another big shift, number 2, is, you know, community supports historically have been quite informal and very local. And there's a whole new economy forming called the caregiving economy. And I'll show some examples. Again, with COVID, that exploded, like a proliferation of innovation of new ways to wrap supports around people, with a bunch of new entrants getting into this space. Relationships used to be offline and local. Now they're being virtual and very meaningful. And that capability really grew with COVID because people were forced to connect virtually. And then, you know, just assuming you get widowed and you live alone, that's kind of done. And there's just very creative new living arrangements, particularly multi-generational, which is the fastest growing segment of housing right now. So just a few examples, you know, this area in Spain, I think it's Bilbao. I think it has one of the highest seniors populations in the world as a percentage. And so they had to kind of get ahead of the curve on this stuff. So just reimagining public parks to embrace these shifts of how people live, physical engagement, cognitive skills in the middle, and kind of social gaming and social interactions, but with physical artifacts, not digital. The way people will live in residences, whether they're congregate or multi-unit or their own housing, is not beige and ugly and boring and shuffleboard. It's, you know, it's alive and it's very tailored to what people want out of their, what they define as community. So it's really a choose your own adventure. And we've been fascinated by how some architecture and urban design firms are really stepping up to embrace that future. And they kind of don't want to design anymore for the old beige and burgundy models. You guys might remember the song Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. He has now pivoted his business model out of music to a whole line of senior living communities that create the brand experience of Margaritaville, a vacation place, fun and cocktails. And there's kind of, people are attracted to that. Not everybody, but it's a personalization experience of senior living that, if you would have told somebody that you're going to build that, they would say you're crazy. It's selling out. A huge growth area are intergenerational living models, amenities, programs. Here in North America, we've really stolen from Denmark and Netherlands and other places that have already kind of combined all ages in different housing concepts. A new business model for that has been created in Ontario. So we say, you have too much house. If you're, you're widowed and you've got a huge home, you don't want to lose the house in the community in the capital, and young people need a place to stay and have a lot of ways to exchange value with seniors. So that's really taking off. And then, just things going on, even if you're in a nursing home or a retirement facility, just new types of communities forming. So we reflected on this story of these 5 gentlemen in England who are, widowed and single. And there's just a whole dynamic of how they behave, engage, and are the kind of the life of the lobby in this nursing home. One other kind of trend, you guys are going to talk about healthcare in your next session, and that's what we do, is how many healthcare delivery organizations, and I would say these are traditionally hospitals, are getting into housing, particularly housing for seniors. So moving up and down the continuum, but also, a diversification play of real estate on their business model. I don't know if the US TV show Golden Girls ever made it to the other countries in the world, but it was a pretty big deal in the 80s. And you remember these 4 women were, widowed or single and lived together in an apartment. And that's exactly a trend that's happening, is this concept of cluster living, is best friends or different people becoming roommates and then, wanting to own a house. Well, in North America, at least, we've designed our constructs of housing to basically say that the only people who can own a house together have to be relatives and usually have to be in a heterosexual marriage relationship. And that doesn't make sense anymore. And so in Ontario right now, we have a bill going through Parliament called the Golden Girls Act, which will just change the law that says, anybody can buy a home together. They don't have to be related. And it just seems bizarre that we're doing that in 2020, but you can just see how, social constructs weren't designed for this. Remember I talked about the caregiver economy. So a very high growth startup is Papa. And this is basically Uber for grandchildren, just a matching for an elderly person to a younger person for a whole range of, volunteer or cash-based transactions. Online gaming exploding, especially during COVID, and pretty advanced stuff like, poker tournaments and things like that. So all to say that everything we thought we knew about communities and livings is kind of up for grab. And as you know, if you follow disruption theory, the incumbents who have pretty much locked up those markets until now are not going to be the ones to self-destroy their business model. And so I think it's just going to open a lot of opportunity. All right, quickly on healthcare, because this is a bit overdone. So I'll just kind of highlight a few things. I think the big shift here is healthcare has been obsessed until now with keeping you alive and keeping you alive as long as possible. Because again, the odds before were if you got sick, you died or you got better. We didn't design a healthcare system for people to accumulate multiple diseases and stay alive long. At St. Elizabeth, we've reframed our whole approach to healthcare to really, being about looking at the whole life course, considering much more of the context of the person when we design an intervention or service. In italics here is demographics, so age, sex, and your physical determinants. That's kind of what we do today, but we've layered a bunch more context on top of that. And then we've considered that, when you're at the right end of the spectrum, maybe at the life limiting stage, our approach might be more of a needs-based approach where we're tailoring services to your needs. When you're at the left end of the spectrum, it's much more of a preference-based approach. Like, you're calling the shots, you know what you want, we're going to fill in the gaps. And then, in between and across is more of a strengths-based approach. And this is kind of the new way to tailor healthcare. And this is not how healthcare systems were designed. They were designed to be, kind of one size fits all. You all know the economic imperative of getting care for aging right. So I don't need to, belabor it. This is just some Canadian data. The bottom says that, the elderly in 2014 made up 15% of our population, yet used up 46% of our healthcare resources, and that's going to only grow. And this data is kind of coming from around the world. So, so it's time for kind of rethinking it. We did some research with Canada's National Health kind of Information Agency that showed that about 1 in 5 seniors that are in a residential facility could totally be supported at home. And more importantly, the biggest criteria or factor that determines whether or not you are sent to a nursing home is actually where you started. If you were started in a hospital, a 3.5 to 8.7 times higher chance you'll end up in a facility. Whereas if you were at home with the same situation, you're going to get the care at home. So lots of opportunity to move care out of facilities and into home. The data proves it, but the business models are just not there yet. This is my life's work. I think I mentioned this is me in my only modeling career I ever had with my daughter's dollhouse. We really see home as the hub of health, and we want to create those new business models. And much like we all say, we're going to stop saying digital health or virtual health. It's just going to be health. We think healthcare, kind of given these signals, when you think about it, it won't be a hospital or a stethoscope. It'll just be the home. That's where healthcare will happen, which is how it started, back with house calls many years ago. The absolute key, which I think is why we haven't moved in healthcare with the elderly, is micro segmentation. This is a busy slide from PwC. The point is, we've treated healthcare and the care of the elderly as a segment of one, which nobody can do that in the 21st century. So, really moving to an N of one. And just one example of that, just it's challenging every assumption of Alzheimer's care is this great little nonprofit business in the US called Town Square, which is like a daycare program for people with Alzheimer's. So, your loved one can spend the day here for like $100 a day. And they're taking advantage of this science around reminiscence therapy, where if you create an environment that is the formative years of when their brain developed the most, and for today's population, it's the 50s and the 60s, you get a whole different set of experiences and behaviors than if you put them in a dull beige, one size fits all facility. So, in the future of healthcare and aging, there is so much to do. This is your buffet menu. On the left is how Aging 2.0, which is a fascinating community of this. They've framed the grand challenges for aging and health. And I added on the right some of the big problems we're trying to work on for our seniors. Okay, let's keep going to tech. So, Geron technologies, affect healthcare, but also all aspects of living, aging, independence. And really, I think our biggest shift at the top is just getting us out of a frame of, these very biologically determined life stages to a fluidity that tech allows you to have, because you can stretch the boundaries of what was possible in a way that we just couldn't before, let alone life extension technologies. So, reminder again, for 99% of our time, we were alive, we were healthy, and then we died. we've now really stretched that life extension, you know, to 70, soon 75, 80 years old. But, you know, it's not a flat curve that drops. It's decline in quality of life for many, many decades, and nobody wants that. So all the science is going to continue to extend life. Some people predict, you know, a child born today will live to about 115, but, you know, the new thing is matching your health span to your lifespan. And, you know, with tech, there's a ton of mythology. So we bust that myth about seniors and technology. You know, the data doesn't prove what people think. And they just absorb and adopt tools. These are Alzheimer's people working with a big tablet, completely new ways to diagnose Alzheimer's that don't involve going to a neurologist's office for, you know, a 3-hour paper-based assessment. Using existing tools that everybody uses to open up new experiences that you couldn't access before. Walking in a forest, bowling. This is the biggest bowling group in North America. Sensors, so Internet of Things type things in the wheelchair, in the for incontinence, in clothing, in the bed, in the coils, in the sheets. You know, that's exploding. Things that detect or sense risk of falling or wandering or safety. That's a big area. And a ton of innovation, you know, well beyond walkers for mobility and enabling and extending mobility, you know, in all facets. And a lot of this comes from other industries, for example, for sports. And then just kind of simple tools that aren't super high tech, but they, you know, they change the game for seniors because, for example, in nursing homes or retirement homes, as soon as you can't feed yourself, you're out. You got to go to a nursing home. So it's a very important pivot. And that's where there's, you know, a ton of innovation and demand. Virtual reality will replace a lot of drugs as a therapeutic because it works with the same neural pathways, but it's kind of free. It's software and it's got no side effects. You know, voice-based digital companions, big application area with Alexa and Google Home and others. And we just launched a product in the market called Ring of Support that takes advantage of voice as the interface with seniors. And of course, robots are going to get cheaper and more accessible and a lot less clunky than they are today. So I've been, you know, curious about the new language for technology in aging, and these are just some fun words that we're starting to see. Okay, I'm going to kind of quickly get through the next part. Last chapter is on money and economy. So, you know, shifts of what retirement even means. So the old world, you know, you retired at 65 and you were dead in 5 years. Well, now on average, you're alive 8,000 more days. That's 21 years. It's an entire new stage of life that nothing was really designed for. Accumulative spending and purchasing power, very few products and services are there for. This woman is 102 in Australia. She spent a lot of her aging life taking care of her husband. He widowed. She always wanted to be a painter. Her father wouldn't let her. And she's now a painter. She's got galleries. You have to watch her story. It's fascinating. And so, you know, we're seeing these reframes of the word retirement is now rewirement. And the skills these people have to offer the world, you know, coding and labor and crafts and, you know, you name it, arts and yoga. And, you know, we keep talking about the future of work. That's like a big topic around the world. Well, it's now the future of worth. And there's a whole organization that's creating a platform to have a roadmap for what's your purpose in those last 8,000 days. That's very different from accumulating wealth, you know, and transferring that wealth to your children. Elderpreneurs, seniorpreneurs, you know, business incubators and accelerators. Maybe, Frank, this is what you guys do next. Create a platform for elderly to create businesses and scale them. In Canada, we've had a program forever called the Top 40 Under 40, where every year we pick 40 up and coming people who are going to change the world. Well, who cares? You know, now it's like the top 70 over 70. You know, and then finally, just on consumption and products, you know, and Frank and I talked about this, like name a single aspirational brand for seniors, right? In North America, we have like Depends diapers, maybe a couple of insurance products, Ensure, nutritional drinks. That's not going to work anymore, right? It's a whole call for a completely new set of products that meet people where their values and aspirations. So this example is Perennial. It's supporting a new way of aging, and it's the same content of this drink as the Ensure on the left, but it's got a very different positioning. It's no surprise then that some of the biggest brands in the world are creating entire categories, divisions to create new experiences, products, services for this segment. I can't do it justice, but this book by Joe Coughlin is kind of the best out there. He leads the MIT Aging Lab, and he really unpacks this economy and what the opportunities are. A couple that I get excited about, Procter & Gamble, if any of you went to business school, the bar to create a new category for Procter & Gamble, they've got detergents and toothbrushes and whatever, is very, very high. They don't do it very often. They've created a new category for aging, and these are the 5 areas. Best Buy has created a whole brand of electronics and home kind of outfitting for seniors, training them on digital literacy. And we've been partnering with them here in Canada during COVID to bring technology to seniors with Google at no cost. And so just to end, and I don't think we have time for the video, but Procter & Gamble has one brand called Gillette, which is razors. They've been in the razor industry forever, 100 years. We've been building a whole platform to tackle a new customer in the aging market as the family caregiver. And for us, we focus on sons and daughters of aging parents and meeting their needs, because nobody's really asked them what they need. And so we combined forces with Gillette recently to bring a razor that they've designed for the family member, the daughter who wants to shave her father because the father can't do it anymore. And I'll stop here and we'll see if you guys want to play the video, but that was Mary Lou, was the daughter in this commercial that really launched the product in Canada, and she's my colleague. So, okay, I'll stop there.
I think we should. Stefano, if you can show the video, I think it's worthwhile.
My dad has always prided himself on being a well-groomed man. But a few years ago, he started to show signs of dementia and has faced a number of different challenges in taking care of himself. Dementia takes away a lot from an individual as it progresses. But one of the things that has stayed the same is that Dad really appreciates a good shave. It's just the way he's always been. Without a clean shave, he wouldn't see himself as himself. Having to shave somebody was really new to me, and I really didn't know where to start. The Gillette Trio is designed for somebody who's going to shave somebody else. The shaving gel is in the handle, it's waterless, and most importantly, my dad can be shaved anywhere, even in his favorite chair. When I'm giving my dad a shave and he sits back and he's got his eyes closed and he's relaxed, it's a very tender moment between a father and a daughter. I'm very fortunate to have a father who's 92, and it's a gift to be able to help him. And when he's happy, I'm happy.
Okay. I answered a couple of the questions on the chat already, digitally. I think the 100 to 200 year question. So my understanding from the literature, is life expectancy on a curve. Most think it continues to be on a growth curve. So that's this longevity escape velocity. So just to give an example, the global life expectancy from 2012 to 2020 grew by about 4 years. And that's, over 8 years of time. And so I think that ratio is getting smaller. Alzheimer's, absolutely. And, you know, but in the big scheme of things, most of the pipelines in pharma will cure pretty much every disease in the next 15 years. What will kill people will be, you know, famine, war, geopolitical things. That's my understanding. So the question here about biological aging, like vascular health from kind of chronological aging, you know, I think that's exactly our point in chapter 3 of we let biology set strata of age that put you in different buckets, and that just doesn't make sense anymore. And that's both your physical body capability can be expanded now, and then also your life extension. So now it's around this fluidity of age. And will social policy, like, you know, changing your age catch up? I don't think so. Will the retirement age catch up? I don't think so. I mean, that started from Germany, pension, you know, but it needs a whole rethink. And that's why your session, I think, Frank, number 5 on wealth, there is so much to do in the financial services industry for, you know, financial planning. We get into it in the book. I didn't have time today. Other questions? Let me look at so that Gillette video, maybe Frank or others, there's the original video when they launched the product in the US is really, really intense. It's a son and his dad, so maybe share that video too. And look, guys, why don't you guys call Gillette and make one for Sweden and Switzerland and UAE? You know, we needed to make a Canadian version because it's just a different context. Yeah. There was a question I answered digitally about will the tech role create a bigger gap in equity, a bigger divide between the haves and have-nots? That's being looked at right now during COVID. So if you have internet and a device, you're going to have less impacts of social isolation and blah, blah, blah. My sense is we will have infinite bandwidth for everybody, just like plumbing and water, electricity. I think a tablet, like, that won't be a cost anymore. That's just like whatever. So I think it's going to get democratized. And I think we need to remind people, when the first smartphones came out, only the rich people could afford them. And now you can get an Android for $25. So I think it will democratize. I don't think it will increase inequity, but it is being studied a lot. And we call that the digital determinants of healthcare. Okay, lifelong learning, Bursu. That's what that What's Next group, the future of worth, is about. That you know, accumulating knowledge, and then all of a sudden you're so smart. Like, that's done. Education's done, and reinventing yourself with pathways to do that, business models to do that are legitimized, will be the name of the game. But it's not just learning and knowledge; it's purpose. It's a constant renewal of your purpose with clear pathways. So, for example, you can go to a course at MIT right now and spend 3 weeks there and build your roadmap for your last 25 years of purpose. That's a product. You know, that's very different from what we offer at the University of Toronto, where I teach, which is like, learn about, you know, geopolitical warfare in the 1920s. Like, who cares? Okay, any other things jumping out, Frank, or others that I didn't see?
No, I think that's it. And I think thank you very much, Zayna, for this great talk. What I really like about the approach you guys took is this very holistic approach. It's not just about technology. And with all the discussions we had here, we also see now identity is probably the biggest part of the equation. It's really rethinking
you got to start
the future of aging. And also talking with the industry locally, many of our contacts said we have not thought that through at all. And that's why I like this Gillette video so much.
Yeah, and I think just like this Black Lives Matter movement, I also think the COVID has exposed the ageism. It really showed what we've done to not value. It's also created intergenerational solidarity because a lot of young people are getting the disease too. So The only other thing I'll say, in the book, you know, we framed each chapter with a persona, like a real interview with a senior before the chapter and at the end. So before, the future, and after. It's a great tool to use for workshops, like with pharma companies or policy makers. It's much easier to design the future from a real person than an academic set of slides. So if I was in Basel with you guys today, which I was supposed to be, we would have been doing one of our future workshops using our personas. So hopefully you can use those tools, or invite me back in a year.
We'll do so for sure.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Zayna, for taking the time. Maybe for the next steps, if I can share my screen. Stefano, can I do that? Yes. Yeah, so next steps, of course, if you want to stay involved in the conversation, subscribe to or check out our website. We have a couple of newsletters here, mailing lists. If you have technology that you think is fit for purpose here for healthy aging and that you want to develop with an academic partner, there is a call going on right now at Switzerland Innovation Parks. Check it out. We can help you to get into that. And then if you want to help build this Aging Well program, yeah, please contact me. We still are looking for some industry partners to help make this bigger. So I want to thank everybody for having joined. So 83 people in the evening here. I think it's very good. And again, thanks to Zayna for taking the time and really sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.